afternoon, Ankeny. What a crowd. Are you ready for a new president to come in 2017? Are you ready for a president that you can trust and who will lead with the Americans' best interest in mind and we the people? You know, in 1979, when candidate Ronald Reagan was starting his presidential campaign, he said, "I believe this country hungers and thirsts for a spiritual revival." You see, Ronald Reagan saw a country that was running away from the heart of God, and he knew in order to bring it back, we need to have a spiritual revival because it's bigger than politics. Well, I don't know about you, but I do know about me. Standing up here in 2016, I would echo those words of Ronald Reagan, that this country hungers and thirsts for a spiritual revival where we turn our hearts back to God, His principles, and His precepts. And to do that, we'll need revival in the church, we'll need revival in the family, but we will also need revival in government, and it'll depend on who we elect a president, and I believe that guy will be Ted Cruz to be the next president. You know, my dad was part of the World War II generation, and they called that generation they called that greatest generation. Now, I remember listening to my dad speak one time. He was doing a Memorial Day service, and he looked at the high school band. And he said, "Don't ever let it be said about this country that the greatest generation has lived, but now it has died and it is buried." He said, "Each generation must choose to be a great generation. And the way you be a great generation is you put the cause of this country above yourself, above ourselves. And then you're willing to stand in the gap when this country needs you." Well, right now, you know and I know this country needs you. It is our time to stand in the gap, put the cause of the country above ourselves, and elect a president that has honor and dignity and integrity and who can lead this country once again. And again, I believe that is Ted Cruz. So if you're like me and you say, well, who will stand for religious liberty? I'd say stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz. Who will stand for the institution of marriage? Stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz. Who will stand for the sanctity of human life? Stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz. Who will stand in the gap for education? Stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz again. Who will stand with the nation of Israel? Stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz again. Ladies and gentlemen, if we want to stand to take power out of Washington, D.C. and back to we the people, we need to stand in the gap and stand with Ted Cruz on February 1st. Now, there are leaders all over this country that are uniting behind Ted Cruz. Dr. James Dobson, Gary Bauer, and many others are rallying around Ted Cruz because he's the right man for such a time as this. But also there's so many Iowans who are gathered around and uniting around Ted Cruz as well. But here's what we need you to do. February 1, you need to show up. February 1, not only do you show up, but your family shows up, your friends show up. Take your entire Christmas card list, but get them to the Iowa caucuses. Because what we need to do is we need to send America a message. We need to send the entire world a message. When I was in Israel, an advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu looked at me and he said, "Bob, when you choose in Iowa, the next president, make sure you choose well." We need to stand in the gap as Iowans. We need to stand in the gap as Americans. Stand in the gap with Ted Cruz and send a message to America. Send a message to the world that we're choosing well. We're choosing Ted Cruz to be the next president of the United States. And standing with me and standing with Ted Cruz, showing the spirit of unity. The first time that he and I have been behind the same presidential candidate. But a guy that he and I, we go way back. We have the same constitutional DNA. We have the same makeup. A guy that you know well. Please give a warm welcome for Iowa's 4th District Congressman, Congressman Steve King.